for everyone's information, Clergy United for Fairness commissioned the Christian Times to research, to compile and analyze the appointments being made by our current mayor. As a result of that, we do have the report, and at this time, I would like to introduce to you the managing director of the Christian Times, Ms. Charmaine Sakassa. Would you come at this point?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the managing editor of the Christian Times, and we were commissioned by the Clergy United for Fairness to research this current administration and the appointments. One of the specialty of the Christian Times is our research, and so therefore we went forth with this task. Today we are releasing the preliminary report, and that will be shared with you by our Reverend Publisher and the Chief Researcher of this report, Reverend Dennis Dillon. Thank you.
Well, let me first just really thank the members of the press corps who have joined us this afternoon. We're here because we're obviously very concerned about the state of affairs here at City Hall. We are obviously very troubled by the lack of black leadership in many of the key positions here at City Hall. We are obviously concerned about the small number of Latino appointments within this administration. And it is for that reason why we have actually looked at the numbers, because we do know that the city, this administration are obviously laying claims that they have actually put in place some, they say 23% of their actual appointments are black. Our point is really not so much about appointments across the board, because we realize that many of those appointments are secondary to the chief or the heads of departments, which are the areas we're concerned about. Now, our challenge is simply this. We delivered 47% of the votes to this mayor. We obviously are expecting to have a commensurate number of senior people appointed in this particular administration, and we want that to be extremely clear. We want to obviously also make the point that we represent somewhere between 27 and 34% of the city's population. It is about time that black people in New York City be treated fairly, and so we are actually calling for justice. Now let me specifically just make a couple of quick points, and then I'm going to ask some of the other leaders that are here to speak and to share their thoughts. Number one, we've looked at going back to January 6th, the deputy mayors that were appointed. 0 of the deputy mayors were black. That's a major problem for us. How do we deliver 47% of the vote? How do we represent that significant percentage of the population and there are no black deputy mayor? I have no doubt that because of the pressure that we put on the administration, they went ahead and appoint a black deputy mayor. Again, we are not interested in tokenism, because to put in place a deputy mayor and put him over universal pre-K, what does that mean? You could have a mayor's office of universal pre-K and put a commissioner over that. So to have a deputy mayor with no significant role in this government is a major problem for us. It is even more disrespectful. So we believe that obviously that has to be addressed. Then we move and we look at the commissionerships. And once again, there's a few commissioners that were appointed from our community. Certainly does not represent our population, and it is really way shy of representing our vote. The bigger issue for us, there are two really huge issues around here that are critical for us to understand. One of those issues is the fact that 66% of the total city's budget are administered by 7 leaders in this administration. None of them are black. How do you, in a city where blacks represent the majority of the vote, and we do not even have a senior role among the 7 top-ranking leaders in the city as it relates to spending power? Secondly, which is another major concern for us, the mayor appointed 7 key leaders around law enforcement in a city where criminal and civil justice are major issues for black people in New York. If you look at the Department of Corrections, you will find that 57% of all the inmates are black. Now, almost 70% of the workforce in corrections happen to be black and Latinos. And the mayor brought a commissioner that operates a department where there is barely 30,000 in its population to run a city like this, as if blacks who work in this department, the corrections, are not qualified to house their own prisoners and to provide leadership for their own employees. That's a major concern for us. We are definitely asking the mayor, because we're not going away. It needs to be understood that we demand justice and fairness. And we're asking for this mayor to go back, restructure if he has to his transition team, and reappoint so that at the end of the day we are properly represented. Equality has to be more than just talk. It must be measured through the number of mayors, deputy mayors that is appointed, commissioners appointed, heads of mayoral office appointments, chair of commissions and board appointments, and all across the board, we want to ensure that we're properly represented. And I need to make it clear to the mayor that it is an insult to suggest to us that an appointment of a chief of staff to the First Lady represents something significant for black people in the city of New York, or the chief of staff to the first deputy mayor represents something significant to black people in New York. We are tired and we are demanding justice and fairness. I'm going to ask if Reverend Dr. Marvin Hooks, if he would share with us. After him, I'm going to ask if Bishop Cecil George Riley to share with us, and then I'm going to ask some of our brothers that are with us that represents the law enforcement community to share with us, and we will take any questions that you have.
I stand today with my brothers and sisters of the Lord, and we would normally be in our sacred place of worship. This is one of the highest days in Christendom. And we would be standing behind the stained glasses of our churches, illuminated from the heavens. But we had to come outside of our churches because of these clouds, these dark clouds of injustice that hover over our city. It's clouds of unfairness, clouds of not being able to be included, clouds of not being able to have fairness in our community. And we're just tired. We tried for several weeks, even months, to get an audience with the mayor. And we understand he has the right not to speak with us. But he will not and cannot ignore us.
That's right.
Because we're not going to go away. We're not going to sit in our churches holding hands, singing kumbaya to each other, while injustices are placated on our people. We're not going to allow politicians to come in our church and speak to our congregations and forget about us.
That's right.
Once they become officials. We're just not going to take it anymore. So we came out today to stand united. We're just a small representation of the people who we are shepherds over, the people who we have joined together in our community to fight with, to stand with. But we're here nevertheless. We're on our way back to our churches, but we cannot allow injustices to be alive in our cities and do nothing about it. So not only must we preach about justice, but we have to stand for it. And that's what we're doing here today.
Bishop Cecil George Riley. This week, all over the world, as far as the Christian calendar is concerned, is referred to as Holy Week. And I think there's no better time for us to cry about this injustice than this week. The Lord has made it so that we are here. And it would be a sin on our part if we did not come here. How much can we take? This is an insult to us. The mayor came to us. He made promises. We gave him our votes. We're not asking for anything that we are not deserving of. And we are demanding justice. And if we sit around like my friend said a while ago in our stained glass windows and not cry out, the stones would cry out. Hallelujah. And I'm believing that this righteous cry will be heard, and I'm expecting some changes. We have nothing against the mayor. We voted for him. We're just asking for justice, and we demand that. And that's my feeling. I'm going to ask if Bishop Bradford would also share, and then I'm going to ask for members of the law enforcement community to share, and then there are a couple of the community individuals that we're going to have to share as well.
I just want to be very brief today, and that is to say, first of all, that we're not here as enemies of the mayor, but we are here as advocates of the people. There are voices out there that are not heard, and we have got to represent those voices. And that is the voices of Black and Latinos and all those who are poor. And so we know that the Lord Jesus Christ, he represents the oppressed. And the blacks are oppressed in this city, still are. And so we just want to say that we will not stand aside and see our people keep being oppressed over and over again. It is time for change, change for the better, change for good. And that is our purpose for being here, to bring about that change.
I'm going to ask Mr. Charles Billups, who's been the president of a number of different law enforcement groups in the city, just to share some remarks.
Well, my name is Charles Billups. I'm chairperson of the Grand Council of Guardians. I represent over 24 different law enforcement fraternal organizations throughout the state, and a large number of ones here in the city. The saddest part about this is that he mentioned earlier about correction. He mentioned the reverends and the pastors mentioned several different items about what's been going on. In a sense, it reminds me of saying it's business as usual as the prior administrations. We came out and we voted, we gave our numbers, we helped support the new administration here now in the sense of knowing that it wasn't going to be as business as usual. We didn't want business as usual. The mayor talked about the tales of two cities. He talked about inclusion, involving everyone here in the city and being part of the process. We were left out.
That's right.
Basically, it came down to we were left out. For him to go out of the city to bring in people from outside of the state to come in and work the city agencies is a total insult to the people who are here, who've been working hard to help get him in office and also been working hard over the prior administrations. So what are you telling us now? You bring in someone from Maine or from up north to come into New York to run a city correction agency, which actually just one of the facilities on the island, Rikers Island alone, is the equivalent number of where this person came from. So now we're talking about bringing in someone who never worked in this kind of mass area to now run our city agencies when we had several individuals from this city here alone who worked in that same agency, who retired as chiefs, who retired as deputy commissioners, who applied for these positions and were never afforded an opportunity for an interview for that same job. So what are you telling us? We talked about equality, you talked about inclusion. When were we included? And when are we going to be included? So that's the question we hear today, and that's what we are asking about. You talking about 47, we'll be constantly talking about it, and it needs to be brought to attention.
I'm going to ask, because that's such a good,
Nothing but answers.
that's a good,
Talking is good, but we demand some answers today.
that's a good segue point just to really talk about the collaboration between the Black and the Latino community. So many of our challenges and issues are the same. We are at the bottom and almost bottom of almost every issue that negatively impact us in this community. And so I'm going to call on the president for the National Latino Officers Association, Mr. Anthony Miranda, to share some thoughts as well.
Again, Anthony Miranda from the National Latino Officers Association. I need to repeat some of the things that were said. The mayor spoke about a tale of two cities, more access to City Hall, equal representation, a greater avenue of fairness. We have yet to see that in any of the appointments. We cannot, a lot of what the mayor likes to say is, I did better than the last guy. You can't look backwards and talk about what we're doing going forward. We need to look ahead. You can't compare yourself to somebody who didn't do anything at all and say that I'm doing better. What he asked and what he promised was a radical change, not a gradual change, not something that would happen after 5 years of his administration, but something that was supposed to happen overnight. When we look at the appointments he was able to make immediately, most of those were Caucasians, and they had no problem getting appointed in the first week or the first 30 days of his administration. Now we're into this month, and we still haven't seen a reflection of the community that actually voted for him, or a reflection of the city of New York. We're talking across the city, not just in law enforcement, but in all the other administration agencies that they have. There's a lot of power in the city, but there has to be power equally. Like he said, he spoke about diversity and having equal representation so that people of color can have a voice that was never visible in City Hall. What we have not seen is that voice. What we have not seen is that access. When a clergy organization can ask that we want to sit down with you and speak about some things that changes in the future, and an administration can ignore them, that's challenging for any community. It should not be possible in this administration. It should not be a speaking point for this administration to say that he just chose to ignore this population and not meet with them. And again, if we look in the law enforcement community, the oversight that he's had, where we have, and with the communities of color have screamed out about discrimination, we have not yet had an adequate appointment of people of color in all the law enforcement agencies. We don't even have deputy commissioners that are minorities in NYPD or any of the other agencies. This is a challenging process. But stop question if risk was something that challenged our city and administration. This administration speaks of change and this is going to be done, but we're still yet to see the policy in writing being handed out to the members and the community being informed of what the changes are. Other than that, by sheer virtue of him being appointed, it's now stopped altogether, which is nonsense. What this press conference is about is that they tried all avenues that were available to have a conversation about things that could change, about opportunities. Again, if you can't, in this administration, I want to tell them, if you can't find qualified people of color, I'm sure all the people here can get you hundreds, if not thousands of resumes of people who live in these 5 boroughs who are qualified and overqualified for all the opportunities that are available. And we're talking about appointments, we have to look at the appointments that he leaves in place also, not just the appointments that he makes now, but if he leaves the old administration's appointments and the administration before them appointments, they count, when January 1st came in, they count as his appointments, because he didn't remove them. He made a decision to keep them and retain them, and that counts against him as well. We're looking for the tale of two cities that he was supposed to change, and that's his promise, and that's what we're looking for, that kind of access and that kind of change, and we can't wait any longer for that to happen. 6 months into his administration, it should have been done already, and the message is from day one. His failure to do it from day one sends a message that he's not really serious about changing the promise, changing the things that he said, and keeping the promises that he made to the people of the city of New York. President Dillon, we thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm just going to, before we take your questions, to one member of the community, just to share, and then if there are any questions you have, we will take them.
First of all, I'd like to associate myself with all the comments that have just been made. I support it. Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Kazembe Batts. I'm currently a grad student focused on urban studies. I support Mayor Bill de Blasio. He has already made progressive policy changes regarding policing and workers. I believe he will be a great mayor. Nonetheless, I am here at this press conference with my friends, including Reverend Dillon, to urge the mayor to review the data that has been compiled and to hear our concerns. Policies are more important than personalities. Nonetheless, it is important that historically and contemporarily oppressed people, the African Black community, be represented at the highest levels of decision making. Names and numbers included in the document are facts that need to be addressed. All elected officials, including the mayor, need the consistent pressure and engagement of the people in order to stay the course. I salute the clarity of the information in the document that the Christian Times has produced. And I salute the leadership and vision of Reverend Dillon and his team for having us here today and helping to create this pressure. I urge my friend, Mayor Bill de Blasio, to review the document, meet with Reverend Dillon and his team, and to make the appropriate changes. I have no doubt that the mayor wants to build an inclusive government that includes people of African descent, and having this meeting with the assembled team that Reverend Dillon has, he will come to a proper balance where all people of New York City are included in the decision-making places that they need to be, places of authority. Thank you.
Before I take any questions that we have, let me just say that this is a representative group from our community. There are individuals here from the Bronx, from Queens, from Manhattan, from Brooklyn, from Staten Island. There are business leaders here, clergy leaders here. There are organizational leaders here. There are members of the huge workforce that runs this city we call New York City. And we're just happy for everyone that's here. One of the big questions is, what is it that we want? I'm going to say, just with a broad stroke, we want justice and fairness. And will that translate down to some very specific things? Absolutely. And on that note, I want to make the point that every significant commissionership has already been filled, except that of the commissioner for the FDNY. And we know that the Vulcan Society has made requests, as we want the mayor to know that we know that in almost every significant appointment that he has made, he has had recommendations from our community. So let's be very clear about that. We are aware of many appointments made, and I do know that the recommendation was made for Brigadier Chief Phil Parr to head the fire department. I'm happy that we have the president for the Vulcan Society with us, and I'm just going to at this time ask if we could get some remarks from Mr. John Combs, and I want to commend and salute him and the Vulcan Society for raging a battle against injustice in the city of New York and winning that fight. Let's put our hands together for them.
As we know that as a people in this city, in this country, we've always been challenged. Well, Mayor de Blasio, I would like to present you with a challenge. And this is it. You've used us to gain foot in City Hall. I would ask you to highly consider fractioning your core nucleus of support by not meeting the needs of your city residents, whom time and time respectfully ask you to do what was necessary. You run the risk of fracturing your core support of people. That is not a threat. I guarantee you that we will remember your behavior in 4 years. This is not a begging. This is not a request. It's a demand. We concede to nothing less because it is essential. New York City had paid recently $100 million of something that could have been settled. Currently, the FDNY still has Salvador Cassano, who is proven through his actions, his inability and his inefficiencies that he's not capable of being the commissioner of the FDNY. Yet you allow him to linger further. To what expense and to what cost to the city of New York? Currently, they're undermining attitudes and changes taking place as we speak. From the training academy, which was part of the lawsuit, to the deputy commissioner of the fire department, they're violating and breaking laws. The EEO officers and such are continuing to violate that which we just won. It is not enough to say, here's your money, go away. The Balkan Society stood not for money, but it was justice. To that end, we will continue to stand. Mr. Mayor, this is your opportunity to do what you ran on, to take the strong position of change. But I would remind the group that change is married to courage. You cannot have one without the other. If you are serious about change, then grasp the courage to adhere that it happens. Thank you, Reverend Dillon. Thank you to the body.
Thank you. Are there any questions that anyone have that they can answer?
Some questions about the report.
Okay.
How is the